And here, before we move on into the program, I want to thank everyone for joining us here at No Soundbites Allowed. And I just want to double check that the stream is going out to the various channels, so bear with me 1 second as I just determine and make sure that we're up and live and streaming properly. So bear with me, folks. And by the way, hello everybody. This is Michael Voss, Dragon of the Southern Tier, and this is No Soundbites Allowed. We are a long-form political commentary, and we enjoy this joining you every week on Sundays at 2:30 to be able to take your calls, to take your text messages, and to let you know what's going on, and to share some of our thoughts with you as well. I'm just checking right now to make sure that we are up because we've had some problems with the... We're up. We've had some problems with the internet overlords over at Facebook, over at YouTube, and sometimes it doesn't always go through as well as we would like it to. So I believe we should be up on all channels right now. And I want to start off the show. Yeah, it looks like Facebook, maybe not. I don't know why Facebook's having a problem. Okay. I want to start off the show today. Obviously, a lot has been happening in our country, and I want to make sure that we're able to share everything with you about it. I want to talk about what happened in Black Lives Matters, who had an event here in the Southern Tier of New York yesterday, and I want to discuss that, what I observed and what happened there. But before we get to that, I want to talk about a couple of other issues very quickly. Now, earlier in the week, I had put out on Twitter, under the MV Consult, we put out a very quick poll asking people, when police leadership resign, as we have seen happen in Seattle, as we've seen happen in Rochester, without any replacements for them, are communities safer? It's a very simple question. Essentially, we're asking, do you believe that defunding the police is making you safer? And the overwhelming response we received, and I know there was only 22 votes, but out of the votes that we did receive, we see that the answer was 81% no. I may put out another poll there to see if we get a better answer, but I think it's also very indicative because even though it's not in a scientific poll, even though it's not official, I think it does give us a sense that a lot of people do not agree. I mean, it seems similar to polls that have come out already. I think it was a YouGov poll that came out and said that roughly 62% of Black Americans want more police, or at least the same amount of police, that they do not support defunding the police, something that we've been hearing from a lot of progressives, a lot of socialists saying that they want to see that. And that plays into a lot of things that are going on right now. And I know a lot of people are watching this instead of watching football, and I thank you for that. But it makes me wonder about what's going to happen in the 2020 presidential election, because we see that Joe Biden is basically appeasing towards groups like Black Lives Matters, Antifa, the progressive left wing of the Democratic Party, very much so to the extent that he doesn't want to denounce the violence that we've seen across the nation for the most part, or at least not by name. And he's willing to do things like the Green New Deal to appease them. So I wanted to take a look, and according to the betting that's out there right now, how many people are fed up with the two-party race? We're talking about looking at Republicans or Democrats. How many people are saying, hey, I want to vote for a third party like the Libertarians, which would be Joe Jorgensen? Because that's really the only choice. You have Joe Biden, who seems to be ill, having a mental deficiency, listening to him speak. And there are a lot of people who say they don't like Trump. So the only other choice is to go with Joe Jorgensen. And the betting, people are putting money on this. The betting shows that they only expect third-party candidates to really get somewhere between 1% to 2%. In other words, they're not going to change the 2020 election, which means unless this is a dead heat, which nobody expects, the reality is that people are going to have to choose one of the major parties. Unless there's a sudden surge in Libertarian candidate Joe Jorgensen or Howie Hawkins for the Communist Party. And I don't see people voting for the Communist Party. By the way, folks, at any time, you are always welcome to contact the show. You can either type in a comment from Facebook on YouTube, or you can also contact us at 607-242-1582 and call in with any comments, thoughts, anything that you would like. We're always open for all of that. So I find it interesting that, because I've talked to a lot of people and they're wondering, well, what am I going to do? You know, there's only so many candidates out there, and I don't know if I like Trump. I was talking to a gentleman yesterday before the protests here in Binghamton, and he was saying, I just don't like President Trump. I said, okay, then who are you going to vote for? Because he also says, but I don't like Biden. I'm like, well, you have to pick one. And I think a lot of people are confused, though, because they're saying, when I asked him this, and he says, well, I don't want to vote for a third party. I said, okay, great. Let me ask you this. Why don't you want to vote for President Trump? And this isn't a pro-Trump thing. I'm trying to understand where people are, because we need to get past the apathy that we've been seeing. One of the reasons why our government doesn't work as well as it could, not enough people come out and vote. We need people to vote. If 7 out of 10, 8 out of 10 people are voting in every election, I guarantee you we would have a better nation. Things would be much better in this nation, especially if we also have term limits on all elected offices. But what has he done? And you know, it's amazing to me that we really didn't hear him say anything about the Peace Prize. President Trump has been nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize twice. Twice. I know President Obama got the Nobel Peace Prize, which we learned was for the hope that he might do something, which he didn't. But we see President Trump has improved the peace in the world because of what he did with the agreements between Israel and the UAE, and then also Bahrain. And yet, I don't see the news media focusing on that. This is phenomenal news. This is helping to stabilize the Middle East, to end the violence that we've been seeing there that's been going on for decades. And yet no one wants to really talk about it. And people are saying, well, that's not a reason to vote. And I find that quite interesting, since that was one of the reasons why people said that Obama is such a great president, because he got a Nobel Peace Prize for doing nothing. And yet President Trump is a horrible president for increasing the peace in the world. Makes you wonder. And when I hear that, I'm not surprised that we see that the betting out there right now says the third parties aren't going to take this, that this is going to be a race between Trump and Biden. And I have to believe, and I tend to believe, that we're going to see the 2020 election, you're going to see President Trump probably win by 65%. I don't think this is a close race. I don't think it's a landslide either. But I think about 65% of the nation's going to vote for President Trump, because overall, he's not the greatest president, but he is a good president. And he has done the things that he has promised to do. Lowered the unemployment rate for blacks, for women, for Latinos, right up until we shut down the nation because of coronavirus. He's increased the net peace in the world. You know, he's got a lot of things that he's actually done. A lot of things that many presidents have never done. And he's done that all in the first term. So I think that's going to be interesting. And I think that leads to a major problem the day after. And I believe 1 hour after the announcement of who has won the presidential election. I said this last week. I want to restate it. It doesn't matter who wins. If Joe Biden and Kamala Harris are able to win, which I do not think is possible, but if they were somehow able to win, I think BLM and Plot and Antifa go into overdrive. And within a week, they start more riots, more fires, more violence across the nation because they want more. And since Biden is already willing to give them the things they're asking for now, they're going to ask for even more. That is the nature of their organization. They are a political movement. they do have the goal, those organizations, of socialism. So, and if you see it's President Trump, I think within an hour, spontaneous, and I want to use air quotes here, spontaneous protests will appear across the nation, and you'll see that there will be fires and violence and looting. And I say that because, in part, we just saw, as an example, in the Southern Tier, Binghamton University, socialism is continuing to grow. Socialism is getting much, much more relevant, much more powerful in the nation. Because we see Binghamton University is now getting a socialist organization, the Young Democratic Socialists of America are trying to form a political organization at Binghamton University. That's unheard of. I mean, socialism? Are you kidding? That's crazy. And I find it interesting because, you know, socialism, when we look at it, a lot of people think, well, socialism's great. It's free. It's not like billionaires and millionaires, and it's unfair economically. Well, let's think about this. People haven't actually lived in socialist nations. I have. I've lived in Russia. I've talked to people who come from Cuba, Venezuela, North Korea, China. And you know what? There is no equality there unless you mean an equality of poverty and the inability to speak. Yet we have students in college, a place where they should be learning and learning about the massive deaths that have been associated with socialism and communism, and they're all for it. And I really wonder, and I would love to hear from the Young Democratic Socialists of America who are going to Binghamton University, and I would love to ask them, what about Venezuela? In Venezuela, they went from being the richest nation in South America to be impoverished. Their people are starving in the streets. The government is running around killing people because they took away the people's right to defend themselves, all in the name of socialism. Is this what they really want? Is this what groups like Black Lives Matter, Progressive Leaders of Tomorrow, Antifa, is this what they really are looking for? When they say that, you know, there's billionaires have gotten richer during a global pandemic while the working class is facing evictions and historic unemployment, that's not really true. Yeah, Jeff Bezos did get richer. That's because Jeff Bezos figured out something that people want, and he's providing a service that people need. Why should we fault him? Why is that bad? If you created it, would you want to not have the billions as well? Now, how he spends it, that's up to him. I can't speak to that. But there's nothing wrong with he created a service people need and use and is efficient and better than the post office. But the socialists would say, you can't have that. You don't deserve that. I don't know. I disagree with that. I think that's a horrible way of looking at things. And it seems that they want us to be more like Venezuela than they want us to be like America. And somehow they think that's going to be better for their lives, to not be able to speak, to not be able to have the same quality of life as we have right now. I don't think people notice that as much or realize that as much. And it's really something that should be talked about. And by the way, anyone who's watching, please do type in, make sure that you're hearing me okay. I know it's going out, but again, I've seen YouTube, Facebook, the internet gods have been messing with the system. So it looks like I'm going across 5x5, but I can't be sure. So that's some of the things I wanted to get to generally. Some of the things that I've been noticing, some of the things I've been seeing in the news, and I think it's very important because they're all tied together. This goes to the election. The growth of socialism in our colleges, where kids are being taught the value of socialism without being taught, okay, what are the consequences of socialism? What's the consequences of communism? How many millions, tens of millions were killed in Russia, in China, in North Korea, in Venezuela, in Cuba, in the name of socialism? How little freedoms do people have there? And this is what is online in the election. This is where our government is going. If you're supporting Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and Biden and Kamala Harris, this is what you're looking at. A nation that's less free. And that's also what BLM and Plot are talking about. I think these are important, critical things to keep in mind. And you don't get the bailout of saying, well, I want to go with the third party, like the Libertarian Party or the Communist Party, because they're not going to get enough votes to make a difference. I'm not telling you not to vote for them, but that's what the betting lines are. That's what the numbers historically tell us. So we have to make the best choices that we see. And perhaps if more people voted, we'd have better choices. But I've been saying a lot about that, and I want to get to, because I think that's important to understand, where are we when we talk about Black Lives Matters, when we talk about progressive leaders of tomorrow, Antifa, the fringe radical far left. And I do mean they are a fringe radical small part of the Democratic Party. But they have very loud voices, and they're very, very dangerous, I believe, and concerning. Because wherever they seem to be, and wherever they're pushing their agenda forward, we tend to see violence. We tend to see looting, riots. We see people murdered. We see in the very same places that people are saying they want to defund the police, very often, or where they have succeeded in that, we see a lot of violence. As an example, yesterday, as I was out with Black Lives Matters, recording them in the southern tier of New York, on the West Coast, 2 police officers were shot. They were ambushed in Compton. It was a man and a woman who happens to be a mother of a 6-year-old child. And yeah, I do blame that on Black Lives Matters. I do blame that on the fringe far left, because we have seen historically that their actions cause their supporters to get very heated up. Their mantra, their hate against the police, which we hear consistently, which we hear in every one of their marches, their protests, even the peaceful ones, are calling the police pigs. They're saying they want to get rid of the police. Many and oftentimes they're saying they want to kill or destroy the police. And we don't hear BLM ever really come out and say, hey, they denounce the violence. I mean, yeah, this is a Google search for BLM denounces violence. You know what you find? Utah on May 31st. And there's one other, which was on July 10th in 2016. That's it. They don't denounce the violence. They don't say that they are against the violence. They're not against violence against police. They're not against violence against other people, like David Dorn, a police officer who died because of the riots and looting caused by BLM. What about Jessica Dottie Whitaker, a woman who was killed for merely saying the words, "All lives matters"? That's terrifying. That's now considered a violent term. To say that all lives matters angers the feelings of BLM, Plot, the far left, to the point that they would say that they would use violence. Philip Price is speaking, and he says, this man is truly in the sunken place. Philip, you may want to explain what that means. I don't know. Am I wrong? It seems you're disagreeing with what I'm presenting here. Do you disagree that Venezuela is a bankrupt nation, that socialism has destroyed the nation, and that, as reported by the New York Times, over 5,000 of their citizens have been killed by the socialist government, that people are starving in the streets, that we see starvation in North Korea, that China uses slave labor, that Cuba is decades behind the rest of the world? Are these things untrue? Are you saying that Black Lives Matters doesn't support socialism and a change of the government? Because the organization has said that nationally. One of the slogans of Black Lives Matters, as said last night, and I will get to it, is saying that if you don't do what we want, we'll burn it down. That's a violent statement. Are these things not true? And as I did a search, BLM doesn't denounce the violence. In fact, I didn't hear from any of the leaders of Black Lives Matters in this region, nor any Democrat official. I didn't hear a single person come out and say, we should have peace, that let's have peaceful protests. I didn't hear them say, we denounce the violence that has happened in other places because of the riots and the looting. I didn't hear them saying that in Rochester. So if you want to say I'm in a sunken place, please explain. Am I wrong? And if I'm wrong, what in the facts that I am speaking about is wrong? I'm asking because I truly want to understand. I want to know. But I do know that we see Black Lives Matters is very anti-police and looking to disband the police, to remove the police, something the general public does not agree with. And Black Lives Matters has never come out and said that they are against the violence that has happened to police officers. In fact, many times they're out celebrating that. Just like we see, as reported by law enforcement today, that the deputies, they were fighting for their lives. This was an ambush. And you know what we see as well? According to Newsweek, that protesters who are saying some of the same things that BLM says, I can't say they are the same exact groups, but they're coming out. They blocked hospitals to try and prevent these police officers from getting medical help, and in effect harmed their own community by blocking off the hospitals. And by the way, if you're wondering, this is a Newsweek article which came out on the 13th, today, at 3:27 a.m. And the title is "The LA Protesters Tried to Break into the Hospital," actually tried to break into the hospital where the two officers were in critical condition after there was a cowardly shooting. A cowardly shooting. And LA is a place that has a lot of problems and a lot of BLM and a lot of people saying that they need to get rid of the police, to disband the police. And you know what? I would love to hear Black Lives Matters come out, Plot come out, the far left, the fringe left, Nancy Pelosi, all of the Democratic leaders, Nadler, Representative Nadler, who has denied that these organizations exist, to come out and say they denounce the violence, the shooting of police. So far, I haven't heard them say that. I haven't heard a single Democrat say that. I haven't heard any of the fringe left say that. So when the sunken place is someone who thinks cowardly to go up and shoot an innocent police officer just sitting in a car is a good thing to do. And if you don't agree with that, that's another thing altogether. But again, you're willing to, this is America at this moment. You get to say you don't agree. I'm just asking you, tell me why. Tell me how I'm wrong. What am I misunderstanding? And we've seen in many places, protesters have come out. Protesters aligned with Black Lives Matters. Back in August 9th, as a matter of fact, they tried to kill an officer in Wauwatosa. And that's terrifying. By the way, as I understand, he's a black officer. But they came out with that. You know what? You know who called for peace? This is, you can see this on YouTube. And this is from my campaign. I am running for an elected office. But on September 12th, I put out a call for peace, for peaceful assembly in Broome County. And in that, and you can see the video for yourself if you wish to, and all links will be in the description of the YouTube video. You know what? I didn't hear a single Democrat come out and join me in saying, let's have peace. I didn't hear the leaders of Black Lives Matters or Plot or Antifa in the southern tier of New York and central New York come out and say, hey, let's have a peaceful event. Let's assuage the fears that have been around for 3 days for the public and let them know, no, this will be peaceful, even though it's being called for at 7:30 at night, which is an odd time to have a protest. And even though they want everyone dressed in black and wearing masks, which is an odd thing. And that same environment just 2 weeks ago resulted in violence in Rochester, New York, where people were being arrested for rioting. And they went out and they attacked a restaurant and diners in a restaurant who had nothing to do with the Daniel Prude death that was being protested. I didn't hear anyone in Black Lives Matters, Antifa, I didn't hear any of the socialists, the democratic socialists say, hey, that violence is uncalled for. Don't do that. Now, if I'm wrong, if I miss something, please let me know. But this is a problem for America. When we don't have our elected leaders stepping up and saying, that's wrong, don't do that, let's not have violence, let's make sure that there is a call for peace, you know, there's a problem. And by the way, folks, if you don't agree with me, that's perfectly fine. You can say you don't agree. You can say, Mike, you misunderstand something. You can say you don't see the connection between the socialism that's going on in our colleges and saying that, hey, I also don't see that connected to, and I'll get to the video in a second, of the mostly college students at the BLM protests. Maybe you don't think you see that connection. I do. You know, as a matter of fact, I want to get to the protests. A lot of people may not be aware. I went out yesterday, did a live stream of the entire event. Black Lives Matter came together, having an uprise in New York. There was another event, similar nature, in Utica, New York. These events wound up being peaceful. As I said, I had called for peace earlier in the day. There was a peaceful protest, and I'm happy for that. And that is the First Amendment right we all have, and good for them. Now, that doesn't mean it was a perfect protest. In fact, at one point, and I'll show you the video, audio you can get later, and again, I'm going to have a link for this in the description. You can see this. There's been 52,000 people who've seen this already. But Black Lives Matter were at the event, and I'm just starting. This is a part of the video here. And there's no audio right this second. But what's happening is there's a gentleman on a motorcycle who's revving the motorcycle. And there's about 300 roughly 20-year-old students, almost 90% of them all white, who are speaking and rallying. And they happen to be at and you can see here, they're at the American Legion Post 80 in their parking lot, which is not authorized, and the American Legion did not want them there. And what we're seeing is the gentleman, which is off screen, off the camera right now, is to the left. He's doing this, and as he's doing it, we're seeing that the members of BLM and Plot are moving forward. The gentleman isn't moving any closer. Yes, he's revving his engine. Matter of fact, let me let you hear the sound here.
There are people who lead up closer. I don't know why. They're coming closer. I don't know why. No one's moved forward, but you guys are moving forward. They're moving forward. Why are you coming closer? No one's come closer to you.
Black Lives Matter, Mike.
I already know that. Is this Talon? Is that Talon? I don't know. I'm asking. You got a mask on. I'm asking. But Talon, no one's moved forward. You guys are moving forward. You don't have to say that, sir.
See, now, I want to mention something about this interaction I had, because I think it's telling. Yes, there is a gentleman in a motorcycle, which I think the video goes on to show, who is revving his motorcycle. He was disparaging. He didn't agree with the BLM protest. And that's his right. And there was about a dozen people, 2 dozen people who were across the street, same side as me, across the street from the BLM protest. Why was BLM approaching? Why were they coming forward and instigating a conflict. That's something that doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. It's something that's very troubling to me. And it shows how close we are to a powder keg. Because the very same members, these young kids who are here at BLM, these college students, think they're absolutely right, and no one has a right to make a single sound, to say a single word against them. That's a powder keg. Acts like that. I'm happy that there was no violence yesterday, but it could have been. And I find that disturbing. You know, a lot of people had some concerns about it. And BLM, they don't like it when they get criticized. They don't like it when people say things like, why are you trying to instigate an incident by approaching people who disagree with you when you don't have to do that? When people say, matter of fact, I'll go back to the video. There were comments there. We had one woman who said, I don't understand how coming into a town that doesn't belong to you and harassing our police is acceptable. You know, this event had 300 people, which probably sounds like a lot. It's not. This is an accumulation of members of BLM and Plot and the far fringe left that they brought in people from Albany, from Syracuse, from Rochester, plus the residents of Binghamton, all combined, and all they could get is 300 people. That's a pretty pitiful showing. In the city of Binghamton alone, there's 38,000 people. In Broome County alone, there's 190,000 people. There's at least 4.5% of the population that's black. Another 4 or 5% that happens to be Hispanic. And the most they could get is 300 20-year-olds to come together from several cities, because most people don't agree with them. Because most people don't believe in the socialist agenda that they're putting forward. And BLM doesn't like that. And people don't agree with the rioting that we saw in Rochester. And I can't fault people for that. BLM may not like that. And if you want to change your perception, how about you start with denouncing the violence like that happened in Rochester, where a restaurant was destroyed, where people were chased out of that restaurant, where they were stopped from living their lives. Why don't you denounce that? Start there. Make us truly believe that you're looking to have some kind of peaceful resolution, that this is actually about improving people's lives and not just bullying people to submit to your will, and that you want to create a socialist utopia, or at least that's your idea. Because most Americans don't agree with that, for good reason. Philip, no comment? And again, this is a discussion. I know that, this is going out on YouTube right now, and Facebook seems to be down. That's because of YouTube, Facebook messing with their algorithms, and they don't like what I talk about. But tell me where I'm wrong. Tell me how I'm not understanding this. Tell me that you understand why the members of, as I showed in the video here, the live stream, unedited, and yes, I'm picking a moment, but this is in here. You can see this for yourself. You know, if you were there, why were they approaching? What was the purpose? Besides the fact that they wanted to intimidate people and to have them stop expressing points of view that they don't like. There's another part in the video where members of BLM were using racial slurs against me. Do you denounce that? Is my black life not as important? Is the fact that at one point someone says, oh, you're a Republican, and they were incensed. Is my black life not important because of my political preference? Do I stop being, and this is one of the things I have a problem with BLM, and this is a problem that we're going to see in this election. Why does any arbitrary group of 300 students get to tell me, a 52-year-old man, I'm not black, and use racial slurs against me and other members who have made various threats from that group against me because that's how they feel. And suddenly I'm supposed to be intimidated and change my way of life? I don't think so. I don't think that's how you convince people in a free society, which is what America is. I don't know. Maybe you disagree. I would think members of BLM do disagree. And they have said things like, well, Mike, you just don't get it. Well, please do explain it to me. Why is BLM justified, as video has shown? This very same video seen by 52,000 people, this video actually shows that they are willing to say and use racial slurs against me for merely videotaping what was actually happening. And that was okay? To express that people didn't agree with them, to say that, hey, people had concerns. Another individual mentioned that, can we, and they were asking, this is a free country, and that they fought for our country. Do they get to choose for you to stop pushing your voice onto them? That's an interesting thing. And, you know, when we hear a group like this, I'm going to cut the video and just show it audio. But when we're watching this, and I'm going to just jump to another part here in the video, you know, this is the group. They're just marching along. Look at all the private homes that are here. And at the moment, this is, they're walking down this private area. Businesses have closed down because of this. And they're shouting, if you don't want what we want, we're going to shut you down. If you don't give us justice, there is no peace. Why do you get to define that? Why does your fringe group, 300 people, are telling a city of 38,000 people, telling a county of 190,000 people that if you don't give you what you want, which is to defund the police, to remove the police force, to allow our lives to be less secure, that if we don't do this because that's what you want, because that's how you feel, well, then we're bad guys. We must be evil, and you're going to burn it down. Really? That's not justice. That's not what justice is about. There's a later point in the video here. I think it's somewhere in this portion, about an hour and 14 minutes in, maybe a little bit further. And they start saying, hey, you know, we're democracy. This is what democracy looks like. This is not what democracy looks like. This is a mob. This is a mob rule. Democracy is going out and voting in November, making a choice, saying, I want this person or that person to lead my nation, whether it's President Trump or if it's Joe Biden, which really means Kamala Harris, whether we want to become socialists, like we see being promoted in our colleges, or whether we want to be more Americans and, you know, do things like promoting peace in the world. But I can tell you, that's not peace. That's not an election. That's a mob demanding people submit to their will. I have a comment here from, will you teach me? It's like they refuse to see the hypocrisy from their own side, and they try so hard not to be racist that they end up being more racist than they are calling racist. Well, yeah, I agree. I mean, when I have had more members of BLM in the last 2 months call me more racist, some of the worst racist terminology I've ever heard in my life since the 1970s. I have to go back to about 1976, the last time someone have used some of the words BLM members have used to call me. Much of it has been on tape, both in the video that I'm showing you right now, which I took last night, and another live stream I did about a month ago when I was backing the blue. But that's okay, because BLM feels like they're right. Because in a mob, they get to choose whatever they want, and everyone else is supposed to submit. And when you don't, well, then I must be evil. You know, it's kind of hard to say that you're not being fascist and dictator-like when a mob of a fringe of an organization, of community, are demanding that everyone submit to their will, or else. Or else what? I mean, seriously, or else what? There's 300 people coming from 4 different cities, and everyone in a county of 190,000 people are supposed to submit to their will because 300 of them said, we don't like what's going on, because we don't like the police. You know what? I have a better idea. How about this? How about we put in a little extra money and we train the police to be better? Not get rid of them, make them better. Let's improve them. How about we use the example, I'll use my city as an example. The city of Binghamton, since the police have had body cams, not one claim of police brutality has ever been proven. They have all been false claims. Not because the police say so, but because the body cam coverage shows there is no police abuse. Why not have, since we're doing it right, which BLM should celebrate, rather than trying to get rid of these excellent police officers, why not have them train other police departments so that they can also impart that excellent training? Wouldn't BLM want to have the police officers in, say, Binghamton go to Rochester to train them so that they could be better, rather than try to get rid of all the police, which leaves us with nothing but anarchy? Doesn't that make more sense? Isn't that more logical? Doesn't that improve the lives of everyone in all the communities? I mean, I think that's a very simple and very logical thought. We have problems with police in certain cities, absolutely. Like LA, classically, massive problems there. Here's an idea. Get the police here in Binghamton that don't have issues, that aren't have that racial incident, send them to LA and have them train the officers in LA. Not go out and have riots. You send them over to Portland and Seattle, not take over communities and hold the American citizens hostage, or have 100 days of rioting. That hasn't helped anyone. You know what? The 100 days of rioting, the fact that officers have resigned in Portland, let me ask you, who has that helped? How has it helped anyone become better? People have less help. I'll give you a great example of what I'm talking about here. Let's say that nationally it takes about 6 minutes. If you make a call to 911, it takes about 6 minutes for the police to show up and help you nationally. If we have less police officers, do you think they're going to get to you and your 911 call sooner, or is it going to take longer? Getting rid of the police does not help anyone. And that is probably the most simple, most basic example I can give you of that. But if we train police to be better, well, doesn't that make it better for everyone? Seems like a pretty straightforward thought to me. Seems pretty logical to me. And I don't see, and I would love to hear from BLM, how am I wrong about that? Having better trained police is smarter than having fewer police. You know, as I mentioned, I'm in an election right now. I have an opponent who supports defunding the police. I would ask him, I ask all Democrats for that matter, not only should they be calling for peaceable assembly and make sure that protests anywhere in the nation, especially in our community, aren't violent, and that they say this every time that a protest is announced, not just occasionally, not after violence has already happened, not after riots have already been started. How about before every single event, and say that this is not to be tolerated, and anyone who gets arrested will be prosecuted, not released? How about we say, and you have this explanation and put this question out there, And I put this to BLM. I put this to Plot, the fringe left. Masai Andrews, one of the leaders of the local Plot organization, which is Progressive Leaders of Tomorrow, who was arrested for rioting in Rochester, New York, second-degree rioting, and who has been less than favorable to me in person, and I think in the video is rather vulgar towards me as well. I asked him, and I asked Talon Thomas, I asked all of those members, please explain to me, why is having a better trained police force not as good as having less police that can provide less help to the public? Because I've never heard BLM answer that. By the way, folks, again, you can call in at 607-242-1582. You can leave a text. It seems that Facebook is not letting this video go through. I don't know why. But you can, if you can reach us on Facebook. You can also reach us on YouTube and typing in and sending us your message. And we're open. I'm happy to hear your thoughts. Because I think this is important. I think this election is going to be very critical. And I think people need to understand that if we don't reject not only, well, peaceful protest is always welcome, but mob rule is not. The results of these kind of violent actions, like we saw in 2016 and the shooting of Dallas police officers, that was directly attributed to Black Lives Matters and the message that they put out there. You know what? And the two police officers, I believe those two police officers, I think that's a direct consequence of BLM. You know what? I hope that as a nation we can come together and say, hey, this is unacceptable. Yes, we can improve things, but this kind of violence is not the way to do it. And we denounce that. Excuse me. Sorry about that, folks. Will You Teach Me mentions exactly. There are bad cops, and the best way to root them out is to have better training and better funding to hold officers to a higher standard, not taking it away. I agree. And by and large, since the 1970s, in my lifetime of over 5 decades, you know what? We are seeing that more and more. I mean, I love how I hear BLM, the Democratic Socialists out there, you know, they like to tell us that America is, you know, it's evil and that we're falling apart and we have to destroy it all. And that this is the worst time America's history. I'm 5 decades old. No, it's not true. You know what? The 1950s was a horrible time in America. The 1970s was better. The 1990s improved even more. We're in 2020. You can be gay and walk down the street. You can be in an interracial relationship and walk down the street. You can have biracial kids. And guess what? You're not going to be stoned to death. In the 50s, you would be. In the 70s, it was 50-50. Now no one blinks an eye. You can run for elected office now. Socialists are saying, oh, there's no freedom here. It's not fair. What are you talking about? We have more officials elected and running as candidates on both party lines. Yeah, there are black conservatives out there. There are black Republicans like myself who are running for elections. They're not just Democrats. And even within the Democrats, there are blacks and Hispanics and women that are running more than ever before. And it is considered commonplace. Tell me how America is not getting better. And it's not because we had a bunch of riots. It's because people understand. Because we have conversations. And we're not shoving it down someone's throat saying, hey, you have to do what we say or we're going to call you a racist or we're going to come out and attack you. You know, I'd love to hear BLM in our region. Why not denounce the violence that happened at your event where an elderly man was attacked by a supporter of BLM? Why not denounce that? The closest that I heard about that was Councilwoman Angela Riley justified the attack on one of her constituents, a 68-year-old man. That's sad. That's sad. Why wouldn't BLM, why don't you want me to believe you? You want me and others to say, let's join their side? How about you denounce attacks against 68-year-old men? How about you guarantee that there will not be riots like in Rochester anywhere else in New York State? Tell me that if any of your members commit acts of violence, if they did something like, I don't know, maybe burn down a playground in a community for no reason, how about you turn those individuals into the police so they can be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law? How about when your members are being arrested for disturbing the peace, for rioting, you reject them? You denounce those individuals for that violence, and you do not let them lead your organization. You want me to take you seriously? How about you take yourself seriously and hold people accountable for crimes they are committing? And that's what our election in 2020 is about. Holding people accountable. We have a choice. And that's why I think you're going to see Donald Trump win, and why I think there's going to be riots immediately after he does that. Because we're asking a generation that was told that their participation trophies actually mattered, that their feelings are more important than the truth, and we're holding them accountable for their actions, and they don't like it. That's what I think is going on. And I think BLM, which is seeking to destroy the American Constitution, is using them and those feelings and the specter of race and racism to be able to take advantage of it for their political gain, which I think is horrible. I said this before, and I'll say it again. I denounce any organization, I'll say that again, any organization that promotes fear, intimidation, and violence to achieve a political agenda and to force people to submit against their will. And that means BLM. And you know what? I think a couple of people have said it before, and I'll say it here. When you have a group of 300 people running through private homes or through neighborhoods of private homes, as they are, in the middle of the night, screaming at the top of their lungs, basically invading people's homes, you know what? That's intimidating. When businesses have to shut down their doors because they're afraid of this event turning violent, and they're sending their employees home, and they're denying their customers the ability to use their services and to buy products, that's intimidation. That's fear. That's not promoting an idea. That's telling people to run away. That's telling people to be fearful of this. If your goal is to try and convince people that you guys are nice and kind, you're failing. You're convincing people that you're violent, that you're using fear and intimidation. And you're hoping that you're going to change people's minds to gain your political, either through intimidation or to cause people to not vote or to vote for you so they will silence you. That's not the American way. Will You Teach Me says, quote, "Your protest ends where my liberty begins." End quote. Nobody is arguing that, quote, black lives don't matter, quote, but when you're destroying communities with black families and black-owned businesses, then you lose support. I absolutely agree with that. Think about it. $55 million to rebuild Minneapolis. And the lie is that insurance will take care of it. No, it isn't. And the federal government isn't paying for it, as they shouldn't. You just destroyed an entire... I've seen this happen before. I lived in LA during the Rodney King riots. Those riots destroyed the black neighborhoods. It took decades for that to recover. And some say it still hasn't financially recovered. It will take decades for Seattle and Portland to recover from the violence that's happened there. Austin, Atlanta. Alex, I'm sorry, Alex, I can't pronounce your last name there. Soganion? I can't pronounce that. I apologize. I don't want to butcher your name there. Says, change will not happen in the middle of the street at the late hours of the night with baseless chants. I agree. And I hope the members of BLM are taking this as a positive. In 52,000 people watching the event in the community of Binghamton and in the community of Broome County, people do not agree with you. You went around chanting, asking people to come out and to join you. They refused. You went past bars saying, come out and join us. People refused. You couldn't get more than 300 people to come together out of 4 different cities. In a community, just in Broome County alone, 190,000 people. You could only get 300. People reject what you are doing. If you truly believe you have the right path, maybe you want to change your approach. Maybe rather than trying to intimidate people while they're home in the evening with their kids, trying to relax from their day, rather than maybe trying to subvert and take over sports, maybe you change your message. You know what? Martin Luther King changed the world. Gandhi changed the world. They never had violence. Malcolm X stopped riots. Let me say that again. Malcolm X stopped riots. These people changed the world. And they weren't doing what you do. If you really want to help, what about the black on black crime that's happening all across the country? 6,500 black on black crime victims, violence victims, according to the FBI, every year. I think that's more of a priority. Why not address that? Why not make this march in the middle of the day or on a weekend during the middle of the day and do this very same thing and say, hey, we're going to stop illegal drugs. We're going to stop child pornography. We're going to stop sex slavery. We want to improve the black community. We're going to get more kids educated, trained in the services like electricians, carpenters, those things that could improve their lives forever. Instead, what we're hearing is, oh, white people are bad, so give us your stuff. That's essentially extortion. And yes, they have said this. This isn't something I'm making up. You can look it up for yourself. It's in the news where BLM has gone into neighborhoods and they said, because you're white and therefore you must be evil, give black people your homes. Happened in California. It was in the West Coast. It might be Portland. I can look that up. And I will attach that link to the description, to the other links that we're going over right now so people can look that up. What You Teach Me says, fear isn't the way to change someone's mind, that's for sure. You just back them into a corner where they stand their ground. Exactly. You know what? A lot of people yesterday, when they were watching this, of the 50 some odd thousand people, you don't know how many messages I got before this event. People saying, are you going to be safe, Mike? Do you need to leave your home? Do you need to go somewhere else? Because they know there are individuals in the local BLM chapter that have been somewhat threatening to me. And I know that I had many people saying they weren't going to come to Binghamton. They weren't going to come to Broome County because they were afraid of violence breaking out. That's fear. That's intimidation. Not one of the people who are getting in touch with me, the dozens of people, the dozens of organizations that I am aware of across all political spectrums. We're talking about libertarians. We're talking about Republicans. We're talking about Democrats. We're talking about conservatives, socialists. Individuals have contacted me saying they're afraid. You do not get positive change from fear. Doesn't happen. But that's how you change into an authoritarian dictatorship. Alex mentions in Portland, they forced white people to give reparations to a person of color at their protest. Messiah Andrews posts about reparations needed as well. Yes, Messiah Andrews, again, is one of the presumed leaders of progressive leaders of tomorrow, which is part of the far left fringe element. These aren't Democrats. You can barely say they're progressives, they're more socialists. And yeah, they want your stuff because they want it. And if you don't give it to them, well, they want to burn down the system. They want to destroy your life. They want to destroy businesses. And we see that consistently. I heard someone, it was Talon Thomas actually, and Talon mentioned, Mike, but there was no violence. There was no looting. There was no riots. And he's right. And you know what? That's the very least we can ask for. And he's correct. And I do commend that yesterday, all of the people there did not do that. But that's one time in Binghamton. Are we sure that's going to be true the next time? And you know what? BLM doesn't get to walk away saying, oh, well, see, we're perfectly peaceful, because we have examples like Austin, like Indianapolis, Jessica Dottie Whitaker, which we've covered on this show before, Minneapolis, Portland, Kenosha, LA, New York City, Rochester. We can go through state after state, city after city, where violence and rioting are happening, and they are being promoted by BLM, and they are not being denounced. America is at its best when we come together without fear, without someone trying to force people to do something against their will. You really want to make America better? It's not getting rid of our police, which will make it less safe, which will make it more fearful. No, the answer is let's train our police, let's make them better, let's band together and address the concerns we have. Let's improve the education. Let's improve the small business ownership. You know what? That'll make America a whole lot better. Again, folks, you can always call in to 607-242-1582. You can leave a message. It appears only on YouTube at the moment. Oh, someone is calling in. 1 second. Hello, this is Michael, and you're on No Soundbites Allowed. Whom am I speaking to?
Hey, Mike, it's Jason.
For people who don't know, Jason from Bing, who is not Jason Garnar, the county executive, but Jason's a regular caller to the show. What's going on?
Yeah, I just wanted to make some comments on some of the stuff you're talking about. I saw your video there, with the protesters going through the neighborhood. Yeah. And, one thing I did have to say, I mean, I know you said it was, peaceful, which, there wasn't a violent act. But yes, the thing is that I think there is something to consider, though. Is just like, they blocked the traffic, they took over the streets. They were screaming at the top of their lungs, at a period of time when families are trying to, settle down in the neighborhoods, and sort of behavior. Huh?
I want to clarify one thing about that, because I didn't show it in the video. Just so people know, and they can see the entire video, as I said, with the link. The police cleared the main street for these individuals, for these protesters to walk down, so that no one would be injured by a car. The protesters purposefully went away from the main street and purposely went into residential neighborhoods to disturb the public, instead of just going down the main street that had been cleared for them. So I just want to make sure that people understand what you're talking about is correct, that they are invading residences. Go ahead.
Yeah, and so that's kind of where I wanted to go into it there. But yeah, where should I start here? Binghamton University, the
Yeah.
socialist program that
Yeah.
now is trying to be developed on the university.
Yeah.
Now that there is really an extension to me is extension of their sociology major. I mean, they already believe in the critical theory, the critical race theory, and all the different kind of trainings that come from there, like the implicit bias and the cultural competency. And they also teach they have their education there is through their history is being taught through there, and that same history is basically shedding it's taught in a way that shows the American being an imperialist, very victimizing group, and it shows individuals like minorities as being victims. And to this day, they push the propaganda and the notion that reparations and full government takeover to make their idea of equity their number one goal. I think, though, is one of the problems is with this, you kind of ask, well, what direction they're going, and this kind of brings me up to something that we saw this week with Trump, where I don't know if you're familiar with what he did there with the different type of critical race theory and different bias training that was happening within the federal government, where he went and put I believe it was an executive order stating that training can no longer happen. Are you familiar with that?
No, not exactly.
Yeah. So what it was is that the same kind of training. Now I have to kind of sum up backwards to what we talked about before with the mayor, because our local mayor went to institute that same sort of training, which is, like I said, it's an implicit bias. It's a cultural competency training within the Binghamton Police Department. They're going to put that training through them. Well, the thing is that this was happening at a federal level, and there was whistleblowers that came out and said, look, this stuff is it's racist, and they identified it as that. And then it later went to the president, and he sent an order out eliminating that from the federal employees, so they wouldn't be being trained in that. But again, this is when I talk about that sort of training, that ideology, I mean, like I said, it stems from a socialist communist ideology, and that's kind of like I said, is just that's where it all interconnects, if you see what I'm saying.
Well, yeah, and of course they've been admitted, and they've said it nationally, that they're looking for a socialist change. They want to get rid of the Constitution. They want to get rid of the freedoms that we have right now. And I want people to understand that means you don't have the freedom to speak. You don't have the freedom to assemble. You don't have the freedom or a right to property. They want to get rid of property rights. You don't have a right to what you own. They get to decide who gets what. These are things that socialism everywhere, and according to BLM, they deny. And that's very important for people to know. Let me also mention, by the way, Philip Price, if you're going to put out my picture, you may want to go on, put my name into Google, and you'll be able to find dozens of pictures of me. Yes, I'm 52 years old. So if you think that's old, that's on you. But if you want to put a picture out, at least get a good one. Don't take a screenshot. And also, Alex mentions that corporate America has given hundreds of millions of dollars to BLM. Where is it going? I think it's going towards, for some reason, corporations believe that in promoting socialism and promoting BLM, because they're fearful of being called racist, they think that they're helping. I don't think that's the case. That's why we see the NBA, the NFL, numbers are massively down. People are turning away from this. Entertainment is for entertainment, not for politics. That's why we watch entertainment. And we're seeing the response that's happening there. They're going down the wrong path, because at the end of the day, that same socialism will destroy the sports and the entertainment that we have right now. I mean, what's the sport team? What's the biggest sports team in China, in Russia, in Cuba? American baseball in Cuba. That's when they can get out of Cuba. They use that to get out of Cuba. They use basketball to get out of China. Our sports are the way out of socialism. And yet now socialism is coming into our sports. And people are rejecting it. And they're using fear. Like what we see right now. Yes, I saw it on Facebook where Philip Price is trying to use a screenshot. By the way, the video's public. Just share the video. But they're using that to try and intimidate me, just like when they called racial slurs at me last night. They try and intimidate me to not be able to speak my mind. That's sad. Michael Hunter says, using the Constitution against itself. Sadly, yes, they are. So go on, Jason. I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think that they kind of, I understand the ideology of the commies and what they think, and I'm not sure if every individual who embraces this movement realizes the direction, to its end, or you can actually even point within our own government where it actually already is, implemented and how it fails, tremendously. And if you want to look at a communist dictator-like individual, look no further than, Governor Cuomo.
Yeah.
When you look at the situation with our prison system and just the way that they output, different products from license plates, which the irony is that, they can't even, make license plates that don't peel and chip away.
Hand sanitizer, that was bad.
Yeah. And then you have a situation where, he implemented it where we had, the situation with the hand sanitizer. He was bragging about the fact that we were able to manufacture that. But then, you look at the other end of it, and then he was complaining. He's like, well, how hard is it to have just local businesses manufacture masks? And the concept was one of those things where you're just like thinking, well, what do you mean? What are you thinking? The fact is that he had economic policies and taxes that drove out any sort of businesses that would be vitally able to manufacture those masks. And so when you needed it, you couldn't get it in this country. And you can get it in the state, but you also couldn't get it in the country because of the same economic, policies, that Cuomo implemented that, got rid of our industry here was also being implemented in the rest of the country, which, now puts us in the situation where we are. We just don't produce, the products that we have. But again, if you want to look at the Black Lives Matter, they say there's a disproportionate number of individuals that were within the prison system. Well, great. So what is Cuomo's solutions to problems? Well, once he takes away all your freedoms, whether he puts you in prison or not, he's basically going to demand what you make and how you make it.
Well, here's the thing I always find interesting about when we hear Black Lives Matter say, oh, well, there's too many people who are in prisons right now. Okay, releasing them doesn't address the inherent problem about why people are going to prison, because they're going to prison for committing crimes. How about we get to the root problem? What's the cause of the crime? And the root cause of the crime isn't giving people free stuff. It's giving people a job, giving them a self-worth. You can't value yourself if you think you're a victim, if it's someone else's fault for everything that goes wrong in your life. And guess what? We're human beings. Everyone's life has things go wrong. And so if we're doing what, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez or Governor Cuomo would suggest, which is the government's going to give you stuff. You're a legal alien. You broke the law. Let's give you a driver's license. Let's give you free Medicaid. If you're Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, let's give you free housing. You know what? If you're doing this, these socialist ideas, trying to turn the nation into a socialist, that's not making you more worthwhile. When you say that I'm a victim, which BLM says, well, you're black, so you must be a victim. I reject that, but they say that. And then what self-worth do you have? Is that going to be more likely to cause you to decide, well, I might as well be a criminal? Or is that going to make you a more productive citizen? How many victims, well, I can't say that. I was going to say how many victims can say that they're productive. That's not exactly true. But the self-worth of a person is much lower if you think you're a victim than if you think you're just a human being. And we should be promoting the fact that people are human beings and not victims. And giving people stuff has less value than allowing people to earn it themselves. That's why I believe in the idea, I want to teach you how to fish. I don't want to feed you fish. But socialists say, no, we're going to feed you fish. Well, that just means that you're dependent now. You're not free. You don't have greater freedom. You don't have greater stuff. You have whatever you're given. That's essentially slavery. Whether you want to look at it as economic or cultural, it's the same thing. I mean, that's the way I think about it. But let me ask you something, Jason, while I have you on.
Sure.
I asked this question before on Twitter. Didn't get a lot of responses, but I asked, when we are seeing fewer and fewer police, whether it's because of defunding the police or whether it's because we see police resigning and retiring, do you feel safer?
Well, I personally don't. Well, that's kind of an obvious thing for me. But the interesting thing is I was examining, Black Lives Matter and this anti-police, movement, and then you have to ask the question, to what end? And the crazy thing was, though, is I was listening to some of the rhetoric that the individuals were yelling out in the streets as they were marching, and it says, they scream one thing. They said, "We have the streets. We don't need the police." And
Yes.
so what they were doing is that they want to be the authority in the streets, and it's not about the technically, I guess it's not about the police, it's about the law itself. They want to be the law, they want to be the rulers. I mean, that actually is the definition of anarchy, to what they're doing, because they want to eliminate our justice system and implement their own, and that has happened. I mean, look at what the different ways things worked out in Portland there, and then look at, I mean, even today with the gangs in Chicago. And yeah, I mean, that's kind of, their ideology and what they believe. And then they also want to end the voting system to actually be able to, allow us to vote for individuals that we wish to. Instead, they want to throw the system over.
Well, and this is being complicated, by the way. As people may have just seen in the screen, I was going to the video from yesterday, and Facebook now has blocked the video. Facebook has now blocked the video, the live stream of what happened at BLM last night. I'm right here. We're doing it live with you folks. I'm trying to show it, and they blocked, at least temporarily blocked that video. So now it seems to be back up, but yeah, they seem to have put it back up. But it's been something that's been very consistent lately, that you talk about something that's going on and they intermittently block it from people, even though 52,000 people have seen it. And that goes along with what we're talking about here. This is all about putting in the fear, stopping people from being able to communicate, stopping people from having a discussion, stopping people from having freedom. And I think that's terrible. Just, a thought I have there.
Yeah, that is scary with the situation with Facebook and that video, because
it's back up now, but they did. Yeah. I mean, literally, I was just playing it and they took it off. But
still, though, is just that they have policies, and quite frankly, you don't 100% know. I mean, nobody actually knows how they rule on different things, or what their decisions are at any points. So, I mean, obviously that's a huge controversy right now, but the thing is that you have a message, you're trying to get it out. I mean, there's only so many different ways to do that at this point. And unfortunately, between, Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube, I mean, if those are cut off from you, I mean, there goes your voice.
Essentially, in the modern world, that's true. And we do know, actually, because Facebook, Twitter, Google have been at the congressional hearings, and they have admitted that they have created algorithms that suppress conservative and Republican voices. They have admitted that they have rules where they evaluate things where if something is being said, the same thing is being said by a white person and a black person, they will allow the black person's voice to be there and they will suppress the white person's voice on the same subject, and that they will negatively impact anyone that doesn't agree with their social policies. That's been proven. And not only in the congressional hearing, but also there was, what's his name? He does, James O'Keefe has even released information about these same things. So it's kind of terrifying. It's a terrifying time in the world. I'm going to see if I can get, if one other person wants to come online before we got about 15 minutes left.
Sounds good.
Was there anything else, Jason?
Nope, that's all.
Well, I want to thank you. I always love it when you call in. I love hearing your insight. You always have a very interesting way of looking at things, and I thank you for being part of this channel.
Yeah, appreciate it. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yep, bye.
All right, folks. So, as I mentioned, we've got about 15 minutes left, and I am more than happy to hear another call come in from 607-242-1582. I do ask. I've had Talon Thomas, who's come in before, and he's spoken on the show by text. He's happy to call in if he wishes. I'll be happy to speak with him. Maybe he can explain why he was approaching the individuals as I showed on the video last night. And maybe he can answer some of the questions I mentioned about BLM. Maybe he will denounce violence. Maybe he will denounce the violence that we saw at the riots in Rochester. Maybe he will denounce the riots and the violence we've seen in other places. I would love to hear it. Or maybe Philip Price, who currently is busy putting out my name and targeting me, as they did last night. In the video, you can see it. And I know that they were targeting me, having people follow me throughout the event, calling me out, calling me with racial slurs. Instead of doing that, maybe you have a conversation. You don't have to agree with me. Let's understand each other. If I'm misunderstanding it, please explain to me. If you can explain to me why I'm not black, please tell me. If you don't agree with my point of view, I'd like to understand why. Because I definitely don't understand yours, other than what I've described, which I think is very accurate. But if you think it's wrong, please let me know. I mean, it's a simple thing to ask for. And that's why we have this forum, so that you can speak. But I think there are some fundamental problems with BLM. I think there are some fundamental problems that we're going to see, that as it appears in our election, that are going to make a big difference for people's lives. And I think the 2020 election is going to be massive. I think it's going to be enormous. Whoa, did they really? They did. I hate Facebook. Took away one of the things I was working on. So I don't know. Maybe I don't know. Maybe I'm missing something. But I'm happy to hear what you think. So in the last, we've got about another 7 minutes here. Let me ask you, do you feel safer when you see Black Lives Matters in the middle of the night, walking down the street in your neighborhood, as we see that they did here? Do you feel safer? Does that make you feel like you want to join BLM? Does that make you say that I want to vote for Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez? Does that make you say I want to vote for Joe Biden? Does that make you say that I want to see a more socialist America, that I want to give up the Constitution? I know when I look at this, it doesn't. When I watched this last night, it didn't. When I heard them say they owned the streets, I didn't feel safe on that street. I can tell you that when I heard them say that they are the example of democracy, I felt like I was in the middle of a mob, and that it was mob rule, which was anarchy. I didn't feel safer. I didn't feel more free. I don't feel more free when I have, as you can see on the video, these individuals on the bike that are following me, when I have members of BLM calling me racist names, that they're tracking me, and they're currently putting my face out with whatever message amongst their secret organization That doesn't make me feel more free. That doesn't make me feel more safe. I don't know, but does it make you feel more safe? Will you teach me says, nope, I'd have the lights off and a shotgun on the other side of the door. I'm not afraid. In terms of, I am aware, I'm not crazy, but I'm not going to stop what I do, but I do oppose them. I do disagree. I don't agree with their goal. I don't agree with their message and the means in which they do it. And I don't think that Joe Biden, in appeasing them, in giving them what they are asking for, is going to make it better. I don't think appeasement has ever helped any nation in the world. History tells us it doesn't work. When we look at the history of socialism, it never works. Appeasing socialists only makes more demands and creates more socialists. It doesn't help anyone. And being targeted by these secret organizations, and by the way, BLM is a secret organization. We don't know who the members are. We don't know who the leadership is, really. We don't know what they're trying to do. We don't know what their goal is, besides we know socialism and making us less safe by having fewer police. Who are they? We know that people like Messiah Andrews, who has been arrested for rioting. We know he's one of, if not the leader of, the local Progressive Leaders of Tomorrow plot / Antifa / BLM movement in the southern tier. We know he works for the government. Yeah, did you know that? Messiah Andrews works for the government. He's a government employee. And I'm not going to give away which department that is, but this is all public information. And I have to wonder, is that making it better? Does that help anyone? Knowing that this individual is responsible for so many different things in the government? Is that making a better government? To know that he would not denounce people targeting me, that he has used racial slurs against me, that others in his organization, his secret organization, are using their positions of power to harm or to affect my life, which is necessarily negative. What are they going to do to everyone else? And this is when they have no power. Imagine if they had more power. Imagine if Biden wins, where they're going to be. Biden said recently, do you think there's going to be more or less violence from groups like Antifa across the nation? I pose to you that Antifa isn't going away. There's going to be just as much violence no matter what, because appeasement will make them do even more than it is if we have law and order that says you can't do anything you want. You can't just target people. But you may disagree with me, and that's okay. I don't expect everyone to agree with me. This is my point of view. This is my political commentary. This is how I am seeing the analysis of it. And quite honestly, we really, as a nation, we should be talking about things that are far more important. We should be talking about the fact that there is more peace in the world today because of President Trump, and we should be celebrating. And I don't care if you like President Trump or not. The fact that he is being nominated for a Nobel Peace Prize twice means our world is getting more peaceful. And it wasn't because of BLM. It wasn't because of socialism. And we should be celebrating that. I mean, that's the way I see it. We should be happy right now. We should be a nation that's ecstatic that the world is getting more peaceful and not saying, well, we got to get rid of the guy who created the peace. That doesn't seem to make sense to me. So, and I know there's people who are attacking me, of course. But hey, I don't care. I'm not going to back down. So we've got about a few seconds left. I want to say again, I thank each and every one of you that listen to the program, whether you do it live or whether you do it later on. I want to thank you. If you enjoyed the program, if you see some of our other videos that we've done over 1,000 videos over the last 10 years on every subject that's faced the nation. If you enjoy that, subscribe. If you enjoy it, come back again. Leave a comment. We try to read all the comments we get. We try to respond to all of them as fast as we can. We thank you, and we appreciate the fact that you've been here with us. And this is long-form political commentary, not just a soundbite, not just something out of context, but in context, thoughts and expressions, and of course your comments. I want to thank everybody who has responded today. I apologize to everybody who usually listens on YouTube because, on Facebook, because Facebook is, doing their censorship. But I look forward to being able to see you again either through the week or next week at 2:30 on Sunday on this channel. Folks, I hope you have a great day. I hope everyone is safe. I hope all of our protests that we see across the nation are peaceful. And I hope everyone is going to be well. And I'll talk to you again very soon. Thank you.